Okay, never mind. It's okay. Sorry about that. I wanted to show you the importance of the role of HR in creating organizational climate. Anyway, then the video doesn't seem to work. Good morning and welcome to this HRDF conference. The topic that I've been asked to present is the HR professional, the challenge of today and the vision of tomorrow. And the topic which I will talk about, what next? What's the role of HR in the future? When 𝐶 about 6 months ago suggested to me about this topic and HRDF invited me to speak, and looking at this topic on what's the role of HR in the future, I've had the pleasure as a C-suite HR, as an executive coach to many CEOs and CHRO. I have always had the pleasure of listening to both sides in terms of what is the HR role, what is the challenges the HR face every day as a HR business partner. So to start off, for those of you, regrettably, the organizer did not print the material. So if you want to follow my slides and a white paper, actually I prepared a white paper for HRDF to provide to all of you. My understanding is the white paper was put up into one of the internal portals, so you don't have access. So what I did was, early this morning at 2 a.m., I just upload the paper and the presentation slides online. So those of you who have your tablet, your laptop, your PDA, can go on to the website here, ce-global.com/7/speaker engagement. You can download this slide and the white paper. At the end of the slide, there's a white paper you can read through as I present. A lot of all this information is found in that slide deck. To start off, back in 1999, I was invited to present to a group of CEOs and head of HR in Beijing. And at that time, as you probably remember, late 90s, there's an influx of talent of the Chinese professionals who have been away in the US start coming back. And that includes HR professionals, young leaders. And I was asking this question: are you a tiger or a deer? And then I see a group of all the older folks, all the, in Chinese, they call it a state-owned enterprise. And they have all the Chinese Communist Party member in front. Those are the party secretaries and all that were talking among themselves. So I asked my interpreter, what are they talking about? Because they said in the Chinese zodiac, there's no, what? No deer. Actually, I got nothing to do with Chinese zodiac. I was just talking about managing the future. It's about leading and engaging the future workforce. So what I said was, every morning in Asia, a deer wakes up. He knows he must run faster than the fastest tiger or be killed. Every morning in Asia, a tiger wakes up. He knows he must outrun the slowest deer or he'll be starved to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a tiger or deer, when the sun comes up, you better be running. This is where we are living in a world, what we call a multi-generational workforce, living in a world of diversity, and you have the fastest tiger, which is the Gen Y, and you have the slowest deer, which is Gen X, then you have the fastest deer, which is the baby boomer, and the slow deer, which is the traditionalist. And soon, in about 3 to 5 years' time, you have the new generation called Gen Z. Those are born between 1995 to 2010. These are the new group of people who are coming to the workforce. And you're going to see a different set of challenges that you're going to manage, how to lead and engage them. And I will talk a little bit about that later. A little bit about my organization. We are a global executive education. We work with organizations, both global, regional, and state-owned enterprise like Khazanah Link Company, GLC, to help them to transform the next generation of leaders. We work with CEOs and CHROs, transforming the next generation of pipeline leaders. And we are the partner for Executive Development Associate, is the oldest, the pioneer in executive coaching in the US. So this is what we do. A little bit about my background. You may have seen my profile, but a little bit about CEE. one of the things that we do is always to look at how can we continuously help organizations to prepare for the future. And through my work with Harvard Business School, I'm an adjunct faculty of Harvard, with Duke, with I'm an adjunct professor with Curtin University, adjunct professor with Paris Graduate School. I work with a lot of leaders in transforming their next generation of leaders. So I'm very focused about developing the future, the workforce of the future. And I'll share some of our research in that area. So what I'm going to talk about, let's revisit the role of HR. You all know what HR business partner. I will just talk about 2-3 minutes what we know today, and a little bit about the challenges so that we all are aligned. What's today's challenges of HR? And I'll talk about the CEOs and business leader perception of HR. And in this regard, last night at 2 a.m., I received some of the latest statistics which I'm going to share with you for this conference, and also the transcript of some of the interviews that we did with CEOs of their perception of HR. I'm going to share with you. It's all hot off the press. It's 2 a.m. local time. You can see all the latest. So everything that you see here is uploaded on the website, the CE Global website. You can download. Okay? And then I will talk about what can you expect, some of the workplace trend in the next 5 to 10 years, preparing HR for tomorrow. What are your challenges? How can you prepare to your team, especially your own team, HR, and your organization to manage the workforce of tomorrow? And lastly, we will talk a little bit about how do we respond to these challenges and some of the best practices. And lastly, what is the future for HR? What can you look forward to? You know, my son, when I told my son, I said, look, I'm presenting this. My son, sent me this. He said, Daddy, it's time to upgrade HR software to 2.0. If you look at the traditional HR, you know, where we see ourselves today, if you reflect 25 years, most of you are very young here. There are some of I'm a baby boomer. So those of you from my generation, you see here how HR has evolved. We were to be those, known as personnel department. We were then known as very highly transactional. Today, HR is involved in compliance. HR is involved in very strategic issues in terms of developing the organizational future. HR is involved in identifying the talent, both existing and the future talent of organizations. So HR has a very, very important role to play. And this is where this event is to talk about the future of HR. How can you transform? How can you help? First of all, you need to start with yourself. So I commend HRDF, actually, first of all, to have this conference is very timely, and also to examine your role as HR business partner, what it takes to succeed. And I'll tell you why, because in my dialogue with a lot of CEOs, as part of my executive coaching, there's still many people in Asia, in Singapore, in Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, still yet to see the full value of HR as a business partner. So in 2004, my work into strategic HR started when I was preparing for the World Congress in Singapore. So I was invited to prepare a paper. And those days, some of you may be familiar with the term called KBE, the knowledge-based economy. It was back in the 90s. In Malaysia, you call it the K economy. And the role of HR at that time, I was asked to define what's the role of HR in the knowledge economy. And the way I define it, I think it's very important to talk about HR role from the context of the organizational future. What HR can do is to help the organization to create sustainable competitive advantage. And if you remember back then, in 1997, the origin, if you talk about strategic HR, you cannot do away with 𝐓𝐸. How many of you heard of 𝐓𝐸? Only 4, 5. Hey, come on, have you heard of this guy? If you're in HR, you have to be familiar with him. He's the guru, so-called guru of strategic HR. And it started in 1997 when he wrote the Harvard Business School paper, the article, HBR, Harvard Business Review, and then published a book called the Human Resource Champion. And as you know, he's talking about the role of HR is to move to the top left-hand corner. It's about developing the future of the organization by understanding and leveraging on the human capital. Of course, look at the processes that you can transform the organization. That's the role of HR. So gone were the days where HR is supposed to talk about employee transactional, employee contribution, talk about managing the personnel, comment ban. A lot of them can be outsourced. Actually, a lot of HR functions today are being outsourced. The only thing you can outsource is to partner with the business to transform the organizational of the future, to reinvent the organization. In 2008, I was asked to, again, to present at the HR Congress in Singapore about what it takes to transform HR, what are some of the challenges. And this paper, Strategy HR, you can find this in my website, the same as the slide deck, you can download. And the three things that I talk about at the Congress. One is I talk about, and which is all of you are very familiar, attracting, retaining, developing mission-critical talent, and developing high-performance work organization, and aligning people with the business. And we all know that. And in my paper, I talk about very specific activities, what HR need to do, and a lot of them are still relevant today. Okay, still relevant. It's 6 years, and I think a lot of HR is still embarking on these activities. But then, to prepare for this event, I decided to interview and ask many of my coaches who are CEOs, and my question was this: tell me, from your perspective, how do you see HR perform as a strategic business partner? So my question is very simple. To all the CEOs that, well, I sent about more than 30, so about more than 20 replied, 22 replied, and I summarized the theme. And this is a quote that you can see. One of the CEO of a very large global organization and in Europe, but also have presence in Asia, because my work I involve globally, whether in Europe, US, or in Asia, even in Malaysia. And one of the CEOs says this: interesting, this is from Europe, but I also validate and asked him about Asia. He said, we are making progress. He said the senior HR leaders have done a good job working as a HR business partner in the recent years. But going forward, they need to couple HR skills with a much deeper understanding of the business. So it's very sad to say, when I talk to his CHRO, and many of them, and this is a reality, whether this is up to you, whether you agreed in the Malaysian context, and I'm sure in my discussion with a lot of CEOs here in Malaysia, the same thing, that HR do not have a very great understanding of the business issues. They have good understanding, and they know some of the challenges, talking to some of the business, but really transforming the organization of the future. How can you develop organization of the future? And this is where you find a lot of HR are still struggling. And this is really true. While you are making inroads into HR as a business partner, but it's still a long way to go in terms of knowing what it takes to succeed in the future and what HR can do to really sit on the same table as the CFO, as the CEO at the board level, to be able to advise the board. Just last week, MINDA, those of you heard of MINDA, which is the Malaysian Academy for Directors, asked me to write a paper on the board's role in talent management. It was just published last week, so you get a copy from my website. And again, I talk about some of the challenges that board members has in working with HR in transforming the talent agenda. So you may want to look at that. Second CEO, this is from Malaysia. This is from Malaysia. He says this: HR is not communicating the mission-critical data to the C-suite. That creates a credibility challenge. So HR, regrettably, are not credible. This is the word of your Malaysia, very senior, it's a GLC. So when I was listening, so I won't mention the name, I was talking to Dr. Sri, this particular CEO. I said, look, tell me, why do you say that? I still see HR performing more transactional, is not able to be a strong advocate for transforming some talent or transforming the business and understanding the data analytics, talking about big data. HR is still not able to advise me and looking at how to leverage on technology to transform the business from a human capital perspective. And this is something also from Malaysia, another co-chief CEO, the word that he used, he said, if I was the head of HR, I would pound the table more so so that HR issues get ignored, because HR issues tend to get ignored in the heat of the battle. So when you have a dialogue with the board, or when we talk about among the SLT, senior leadership team, you find it very sad to say HR issues always get ignored, and there are other more pressing issues, which is really not true if you look at organizations like GE, Oracle, you look at Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, which I consult for over the years, Procter & Gamble. You find that this is not, HR is integral. And always you find, as a CEO, even myself, I'm running organizations globally, I always have on my left, my CEO, I need to have a strong finance person, and my CEO, I need to have a very strong HR on the right. So you always, and this is the word of Jack Welch, you must have always, HR should be at least number 1 or number 2. So you guys are positioned very well. You have a great future. HR role today is beginning to be recognized, and HR should continue to reinvent. And this is, unfortunately, at a lot of time when there's a tough, challenging issues being discussed, HR is always put, and this is true in a lot of GLC. So even in Malaysia, when I was talking to a lot of, even some of the board members of the GLC, and I asked them, and I talked to some of the chairmen of the board, what happened? Because we simply don't see HR as credible. We don't see HR demonstrating the true value. And this is something which is common also in the private sector. So not only in the GLC, not only in the government, but in the private sector. And lastly, this is HR for Singapore. Okay, and he says this, he said that HR leader can show value to CEOs by focusing on strategies to further cultivate senior talent. The word he used, senior talent, and to keep the valued leaders the organization has. In other words, 2 roles. One, you talk about developing the leaders of the future, but at the same time, you need to talk about the current leaders you have. The challenge is, how do you retain the current talent? How do you reinvent the organization when you talk about transforming the organization of the future by looking at the talent that you need to drive the business forward? But at the same time, you need to retain the existing talent, because the people that you have, that's the most important, so retaining them and then developing the future talent. Especially we're talking about the Gen Y and the Gen X, the leadership talent of the future. So to validate the findings of my interview with CEOs, so I decided to, my team in the US, decided to look at the EDA team worldwide, look at papers, research published by international consulting organization. One of them is the KPMG research. Now listen very carefully and look at this. It's very damning, sorry. It's very sad to see this. When they interview CEOs, so they ask CEO, tell me, what do you think, what is the role of HR in your organization? And how effective is HR? So 81% of them see talent management as a very important aspect of creating a sustainable competitive advantage for the organization. So there's no CEO today that I've met, or any C-suite leader, even the board that I've met, who do not acknowledge talent as the most important currency of the future of the organization. So talent there's no need to sell the idea, people acknowledge that. But the challenge is, you look at the second point, only 15% CHR is able to provide insightful and predictive workforce analytics. So in managing talent, so we talk about big data. How do you now leverage on those data, looking at the trend, the workforce analytics, to be able to help the organization to plan for the future, the workforce planning? A lot of HR is still struggling to understand what exactly is big data, and how do you use it, and how can we transform the organization in the future. So that's second point. The third point is only 17%, 17, view HR as able to demonstrate the measurable value to the business. So in other words, HR is not demonstrating the true value as a business partner. 17%. And this is a global survey of thousands of CEOs which KPMG look at. Now, my question to you is, ask yourself, where do you fall in? Is this something that does it resonate with you? Is it what you have heard from your organization, your leadership team? And unfortunately, and this is something which, as I go around, whether Europe, I do work in US, Europe, and Asia. I was in Russia last February, I was in Unilever, and I was presenting at a conference in Russia, and I was asking this question to audience like this. So asking the question is, what exactly how do you see your HR in your organization, and what do you think HR should do differently? And the common theme that I always hear is HR is not able to prove their worth or able to demonstrate the value, and because we are so focused on the transactional aspect, and this is continuously happening in many organizations where HR is trying to always looking at, fighting fire, the day-to-day, all the activities that you need to focus on, and to think of the future, that is secondary. So look at this paper, Rethinking the Human Resource in the Changing World. It's published by KPMG. It's a good paper. You can review, go to kpmg.com, you can download the paper. And then I was asking some of my colleagues in the US and Europe, so tell me, so where do you see HR heading? What are some of the challenges, the work trend of the future? Number one, we are dealing with a changing demographic profile. So we are talking about a multi-generational workforce. Now, whether you like it or not, the Gen Y is here to stay. Now, question is, how can we harness the potential of Gen Y and soon Gen Z, which are coming to the workforce, to help them to integrate, to work more effectively with the other generation? How can we look at of course, we all talk about the different multinational, different ethnic group, different international workforce, or what we call the global talent. And this is the challenge we see today, is that as a lot of the economy, they are opening up, but unfortunately some of the economy start closing in terms of the borders. UK, for example, is facing the challenge, the decision, the critical point whether, are they going to open up, although they're part of the EU. And ASEAN, as you probably know, in the year, I think it's 2016, we're going to be an integrated market, and this is a big challenge. How are you going to see, there are a lot of things that cannot be resolved. How are we going to address the challenge of the mobility of the workforce across ASEAN? But the challenge is that the advantage is that, or the opportunity is that you can leverage on those talent across the ASEAN community to be able to help you to strengthen your HR workforce. And lastly, in something which all of us have to live with, the technologies of the future. The workforce of the future is going to transform, and technology is going to transform totally the way we work. People are going to bring their own device, bring their own tablet, their own computer. Gone were the days where the IT compliance were defined. This is what our protocol, you cannot bring your device. We do not allow you to connect because of security, because of various, those are gone will be the days. You have to allow people to do that, especially the Gen Y and Gen Z. They only know, they have to be connected 24/7. Cloud computing. And this is going to transform a lot of data analytics, a lot of information that you need to predict the workforce of the future. If you talk about workforce planning, you need to leverage on, and I saw a lot of quite a number of vendor who is out there in the exhibition. Some of them offer such services, which I think is worth to seriously think about how to leverage technology. But remember, technology is an enabler. Don't be a slave to technology. Technology helps you to be able to be more efficient, help you to make decisions, to leverage on the advantage of what technology offers. Okay? It's a very busy slide. You can download from you can see it. But the future of the work today, what we have seen in our dialogue, EDA and CE worldwide, when we talk to HR and also business leader, the transformation, the employee engagement is going to be still very important. Employee of the future is going to stay with you because they believe what you believe. And when they believe what you believe, then they will work for you and they will be able to be engaged. And this is where you see a lot of organization is trying to put a lot of emphasis on employee engagement. This is important. And of course, along with that, we talk about the people first. Yeah, right in the middle, people first. 2 weeks ago, I was asked in Singapore, Straits Times, talk about employee engagement. So I said that a leader has to focus, putting employee before customers and profit. But if you don't get your people's strategy right, nothing else matters. So in other words, all of you in this room has a very important role to play because you have a very critical role to play. And I continuously talk to a lot of organizations at all levels. Many people acknowledge that, but yet you see very few organizations very successfully able to transform. So people strategy always comes first. And of course, there's a cloud strategy, Oracle, SAP, and many other IBM mostly provide, so HP provide software to help you to develop your HRIS, Human Resource Information System. So this is the future. The future is still about people. The future is about engaging, especially the Gen Y, the Gen Z. The Gen Z they are born in 1995. They're born in the internet era. If you remember, 95, 96 is where the internet started picking up, what you call the browser war. Netscape and, Mark Anderson from Netscape and Microsoft, Bill Gates, the war of the browsers. That's where the internet started picking up in the US back in 95, 96, 97. So that is something which you're going to live with. And these people, the younger workforce, the Gen Y and Gen Z, they only know, that's the only thing they didn't know. So how do you transform, how do you get your organization rally behind it and help them to prepare for the future? So this is the latest to 2014. Last night, I was talking to my US, until 2 a.m., I was asking my US team to validate, and one of the things that we found, what I've just spoken about is all validated in the research by Deloitte. And Deloitte published, middle of this year, you call it the Human Capital Trend for the 21st century, engaging in the 21st century. So nothing new, but the way how you deliver value has changed. Lead and develop, and here is you need to develop at all levels. So transforming the organization of the future, meaning talking about at all levels, not just the top leadership. How do you transform all levels? And understanding what are some of the challenges, the values. As you move up the hierarchy of leadership, the values, the practices, the competency, the skills differ. How do you transform? How do you help them to develop? How do you leverage on the global workforce? This is something which people are still struggling across border. And there will be more and more contract staff. You must be prepared. The workforce of the future is no longer the usual, what they call the contract with your employees will change from that of a permanent staff to that maybe of a contractual staff. Then how do you then re-energize by putting employee in charge of learning? Let them decide what they want to learn, not HR dictate. In some of the companies I go to, they tell you, okay, we have 7 days, we have 10 days of learning. Yesterday I was with another organization, they said, oh, we have the civil service have 10 days of, we must. Everybody must go through 10 days of learning, and this is the program we are arranging. Everybody just go, just sign up. Just fulfill your KPI. But today, this is what's happening, but in the future, you will deal with Gen Y and Gen Z especially, they will dictate. They want to be in charge of their own learning. Are you ready for that? How do you find innovative ways to attract recruit using social media, which is happening right now? How can you be more integrated into your whole organization? How do you drive passion? I was about to show the video, unfortunately the system doesn't work, about Happy. One of the benchmarks you're looking at, and I always walk in every Monday morning. I make a point not to make appointment to, I always make a point, I make a point to make an appointment to see client, not to do any workshop or any engagement on Monday. Why? For a simple reason. I like to go to client organization and ask 2 questions. One is talking to the receptionist, talking to the frontline staff. How does it feel to work around here, to work in this organization? How does it feel? Are you engaged? Are you feel happy? Do you feel frustrated? How do you feel? And let me tell you a story. About 4 years back, when I was doing this this is in Malaysia.